Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of Shooting the Breeze. As usual, I am one of your hosts, the Soda King, and joined by none other than Big Fudge himself, Ben Rayner. Sorry, we're doing a How I Met Your Mother watch along right now, so I've been calling him Big Fudge. Um, and we have returning our very first guest on this show, none other than Alex Shashek. How are you doing?
I'm pretty spiffy. I got my wine. I got my blueberry cheesecake. I'm in a
Oh,
chatty mood.
blueberry
Uh,
cheesecake. Oh,
let's
I
do
haven't had
it.
blueberry cheesecake in forever. Oh,
It's so
you're
good.
evil. You're evil.
I got it for you guys. I was like, I'm here with these guys. I gotta get my blueberry cheesecake.
Well, I'm trying to lose weight, so I will live vicariously through your eyes. So, as usual, we do like to have our guests introduce the topic. So, Alex, would you please introduce what you chose for us to start off with today?
Yeah, absolutely. The subject I actually chose to chat about today with you guys in particular is specifically cult documentaries and also by extension multi-level marketing schemes, also known as pyramid schemes. And the psychology that goes into it, surrounding it, and the people that end up being manipulated actively through uh, this kind of real creepy world. How easy it is and how common it is for people, our neighbors, our family, to. So that's why I wanted to talk about. I've been obsessed about it recently. I went into a deep dive, a bunch of documentaries, a bunch of YouTube videos.
Well, okay, so what was the first documentary then that started the deep dive that kind of got you falling into the well, so to speak?
Yeah, well, the first one I watched was actually in November. It was one of
Mm,
the Nexium ones. I can't remember if it was like on Amazon or something along those lines. I know there was two big ones,
Was
but I
it
watched two of
Novell?
them. I'm sorry.
Was it Novell? That one?
Yeah, I know the vow is one of them. Yes, but it's based on it's a real documentary. It's a real cult that has been around for like 20 something years
yeah,
and surrounding a very charismatic leader, Keith Raniere, tomato, tomato,
creeper.
and there's groups within
Mhm.
groups that one of them ended up becoming a sex cult, and a lot of celebrities were involved with. There was a handful of Star Wars actors,
Which is the one that
Alex
surprised
Mack,
me. That's
yeah,
right.
Alex Mack from Smallville. She was a
Yeah,
recruiter for women to get in it. There was a lot of people.
yeah, I remember. I remember when that hit. It was just like holy shit. And I lived in Vancouver at the time when she was recruiting here, and it's not something you ever heard about this cult of sorts. You never heard about it. And so when I came out, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's a very scary process. We always hear about these things about cults as if it's like, oh, that would never happen to me. This would never happen in my neck of the woods. This only happens to people that are stupid, people that are clearly not smart, that don't know the signs,
Mm,
that are asking to be manipulated.
yeah.
But a lot of these women are these people, not only women, but a lot of these women are highly educated. They are from prestigious families. So one of the victims that was actively involved in this cult, he was actually the son of the prime, like the not the prime minister of like the president of Mexico. He was involved. He was like one
Okay.
of the people that tried having Keith Raniere at his house when he was actually supposed to be on parole, but he fled the U.S. and he stayed at his son's house in Mexico. Like that, he was linked to a handful of heiresses, some extended royal family members from
Holy
a
crap.
handful of different European families. So it's a lot of influential people somehow being manipulated through this process by one creepy fucko.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a lot of people that they're smart people and people you wouldn't think are easily manipulated. Like, what do you think causes them to be so easily manipulated? Like, what is it?
I mean, I think everyone goes through phases of life where they're actually searching for guidance,
Mhm.
where we're searching for maybe it's the loss of a loved one. Maybe we just broke up with a partner, or maybe we just lost our job, we are just looking for a change in life, and we just want some kind of structure, someone to tell us what to do to a certain extent, to kind of guide us to the next step when we're feeling not so content. And as a result, you're kind of open to suggestible things sometimes, not always, sometimes. And some things it's very obvious what they're trying to do, and other times it's not so obvious. It's much, much more subtle. And sometimes it's through business, sometimes through like things like a multi-level marketing, which employs a lot of the similar aspects of cult thinking and manipulation as active cults, such as Heaven's Gate and Nexium. I
Yeah.
remember watching some of these
Jonestown.
documentaries. Yeah, Jonestown.
Yeah.
I watched several of these documentaries and I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. I remember being in a handful of these specific sessions and having these conversations about isolation, about contributing to your group, and this feeling of being part of a family that is so wonderful to someone, comforting to someone that just needs that extra bit of love at that time in life.
So you said you've been in these type of meetings before. Was that something you were conscious of at the time?
Yes and no. Thing is, when I was right out of college, I went to school for mass communications. I was this young thing, 22, 23 years old, straight out of school, and I was going on interviews with a bunch of companies, and I ended up interviewing with this marketing company. And essentially, it was these events to essentially sell product, but the idea was about selling product. It was about you're not in the company to sell product per se. It was all about the idea of having your own company, and there's the idea of being a girl boss and being able to contribute to the team and helping others submit goals. And there was a lot of exercises we had to do in order to see each other's competition. You're constantly competing for attention. The idea of money, like you don't deserve money unless you actively work for it. Like I remember never eating during lunch. I remember working like 12-hour days and skipping lunch, working through my lunch and all my breaks and everything, because my thought process was I don't deserve to eat. Because I need to work. I need to actively work for my paycheck. And I was so small. I was so small.
That's inhumane.
It was really sucking. And I pretty much worked for a minimum wage. And I was at that point, I was actually told, I was like, well, why do you, and I was like, there's points where I was like, hey, I feel like I've been working for this long. I feel like I deserve this much. And they're like, well, why do you deserve it? You haven't done anything else. And I was like, well, I've been here for this long and X, Y, and Z. I work, I do produce these results. And they're like, yeah, but you don't have X, Y, and Z. Therefore, we don't think we can't justify it. And it was very, very frustrating. But I had a lot of friends and family members tell me actively, very regularly, that this was a pyramid scheme. And I was like, no, I'm just not explaining it right. My boss can, but I can't.
Yeah.
And so it's so clear now, but.
So what? Okay, so you said off air that this was a multi-level marketing scheme. So what is the difference between that and a pyramid scheme?
There is no difference.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just gonna. This is my to-do list here, but I'm gonna draw you a picture.
Okay.
So essentially, I would work at an office. I would work at a head office, right? Here in, let's say it's in Chicago. It's a big office. And the idea was to every year get 6 people out to to have their own offices. And in order to do that, they would be leaders. In order to become leaders, they would be so consistent in the field, sales wise, but we would never use the word sales. It was never sales. Just things like that. But as a result, the idea was not so much actually selling product. It was more about getting our people to recruit efficiently and recruiting so many people a week. So we would have so many people, and then they would have leaders, and then those people would also have anywhere between 6 to 10 people on their team. And so it kind of spreads out
Okay.
even more so. And it just keeps going. But I did a lot of sales. I worked as a team leader, and I also worked as a recruiter to help my office as well as other offices recruit as well.
How long were you
And
there for?
5 years.
Holy Jesus! Wow.
Yeah. I was in a leadership position. I trained others on what to say, how to work with your boss efficiently, how to be everything your boss needs you to be. Things like I remember having conversations with girls. I was in a mentorship position where I would train people and literally say like, "Oh, okay, Ben, I think you're doing really great at work, but what we can do, I can tell you're having a lot of negativity throughout your day. So what I need you to do is actually finish 200 calls, and I need you to do it with a positive voice because I don't think you're positive enough on your calls because your energy is not transferring well enough over the phone. And therefore, the people that you're bringing in for interviews are not going to be positive either. So you need to be better."
Wow. So what was
Okay.
you were there for 5 years? So what was the breaking point? What was the final straw?
My boss actually ended up getting really sick, and she ended up having to move
Mhm.
to another city because of her medical issues. And um, and as a result, I had to move to a different office. And they were like, and I had several offices beg me to come to their office because I was so popular. And I was so good at training, and I was such a positive influence. and it's really nice, the feeling of being kind of fought over and sought after.
Wouldn't know.
Um, especially because I was very confident. I knew what I was doing, and at that point I was doing it in 5 years in an MLM. Might as well be a millennia.
Hmm.
It's a dime a dozen. But I did that for a long time. But once I was with this other office, like the money was different, and I was just like not as happy, and the hours were a little wonkier. I didn't have the same relationship, and I just wasn't as happy. And again, I'm still working like 12, 13-hour days, 14-hour days,
Wow.
not skipping my meals, things like that. And I just wasn't healthy, happy.
Mm.
And I was just very sad. My husband, he later told me, if you had never possibly, if I don't know if we would be married right now if he had never left that MLM, because it was such a dominant force in your life where it would dominate, manipulate entire conversations. And he's like, when I'm talking to you about work, I'm not talking to you. Your boss is talking through you on certain subjects. And I would be like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, that's not something you would say. That's something your boss would say. That's something your boss wants you to say. So it would come across like this. And I'm like, oh shit. So that manipulation is very, very real.
What's the biggest thing you took away from that experience?
There's a lot of aspects of that life that I actually miss. I do miss the family aspect, how close I was. There was a lot of friendships I developed. Two people that were in those businesses actually became my bridesmaids.
Oh.
Yeah, I still talk to one of them every once in a while. The other one not so much, but like almost like the moment you leave the business, you're cut off completely, because you could be a bad influence to other people and really make them super negative on the experience. And maybe entice them to quit as well. So you'd be cut off essentially. from those friendships. But yeah, I miss the family aspect. I miss the idea of helping people and having a mentorship, mentoring others, actively helping others and working towards goals. It was really, really fun. I'm very much a goal oriented person. And so I don't have goals. I feel very lost. I actively have, like every single day, I have like a to-do list, whether regardless of the day of the week, and I'm like, I have to do this in order to feel some kind of accomplishment. And so it's really nice to have that for myself and that structure. And
Well,
so seeing this
yeah.
and seeing a lot of these conversations that I know I've had with other people, I was trained to have with other people, as well as my boss having with me, seeing them in these actual cults where people have killed themselves, where people are like slaves, or people could give up their life savings to be in this other cult. It was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, you getting some PTSD. Eh? Yeah,
I
that must have been pretty hard to watch that, and then you're like you've lived it.
I'm very grateful to a certain extent to be in it, because it made me who I am. It definitely made me tougher, more confident in myself, in my general skill set, also my people skills, and um, my general skills to work with others. But yeah, it really kind of saddens me that I was in it as aggressively for as long as much as it dominated so much of my life for such a long time.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Oh,
I'm
oh,
just curious. I'm sorry, but how do these courts get away with it? It seems almost illegal.
It's actually a really interesting question. Well, how it gets away with it, because it's technically not a pyramid scheme.
uh,
Uh,
it's like
Because
Scientology is technically a
it's
religion.
right. Well, each office, even though each office is its own company, but it's not really in control, because people that like the owners of each company, they have like a business account and everything. Other people have access to those business accounts outside of the owner of the company. Like the person, like I told you, the person, the person, my boss, they had like 15 people. They had like 15 people open up offices on their behalf in different cities around the U.S. DC, Miami, Fort Lauderdale,
Oh
Austin.
shit!
There's like 10 offices in Chicago, a handful over in LA, and St. Louis, everywhere. And my boss had access to all their business accounts. And even though didn't, she wasn't owner of those other companies, but she had access to them. It's a really wonky thing. So it's really
It's like
funky.
working for Big Brother.
Yeah.
So when I heard that the topic was going to be cults, like in my head, like I said, I was trying to think of cult documentaries. The only thing I could think of a Tiger King, but now hearing you talk about cults, I'm like, that's a way off, way off.
Yeah. Well, it was something to remember is that the cults come in so many different sizes. There's so many cults that are being made. The cults have always been a thing, and it's kind of a joke that what's the difference between a religion and a cult? Time. It's like, you don't think Jesus Christ, as it was at one time with him and his 12 disciples, was considered a cult, or kind of
Yeah,
creepy?
I mean, hell, they were crucified for that, right?
Yeah, it's a really creepy thing, and and now it's looked at as a religion. It's not a cult, it's a religion. It's a very different conversation. Um, but it's just weird seeing a lot of these practices, and my experiences being duplicated in these much more severe situations. And I'm just so grateful I'm out of it
Yeah,
for
no
as
kidding.
long as I have.
Yeah, how
But
long? If you don't mind me asking, how long have you been out?
I've been out for, I want to say 5 years
Right on,
now.
yeah.
right
Yeah.
on.
Mhm.
So, pretty much the most famous cult in the world, I'd have to say, is Scientology. Wouldn't you agree?
Is it? I mean, I don't know. Is it?
You know what? That seems to be the one that everyone seems to be talk about.
It's definitely a pretty solid argument,
Yeah,
and the thing is, there's a lot of what we when we think cults, we think of people that are stupid. We don't.
yeah,
We think of um, people that aren't attractive. And I hate to be that asshole, but it's usually the pretty darn the opposite. If you look
yeah.
at Scientology, a lot of super duper attractive people, a lot of educated people as
Mhm.
well are in this, and they are actually recruited specifically to help recruit others. If you look at a lot of the recruiting tactics to get into cults, if you look at Jonestown, if you look at Heaven's Gate, what they do is that they bring in quote unquote traditionally attractive people to entice others to come
Mhm.
in.
Sounds like
And
advertising in a way.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's encouraged to, at least in some of the documentaries that I've seen, some of them are encouraged to use sexual tactics to entice people.
Hmm.
No wonder why they went out. No wonder why they went after Tom Cruise for Scientology.
No kidding.
He's like,
Well, so I and not to mention, a lot of people are also born into it. If
Yeah.
you're born into this world, surrounded by people who are part of it your entire life, and you don't know anything else. I can't imagine the idea of being controlled to that extent and having the conversation of potentially leaving, because that means leaving your community, possibly leaving your family and never seeing your family again, or maybe even your kids, your partner.
Yeah, or your siblings or what have you. Like just hearing you say that reminds me of the West Baptist Church. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Like to hear those stories of like God, what's the last name of those group? But anyways, the one who was pretty much the cheerleader for the longest time, Megan. To hear her after she left, it's just like, yeah, pretty much my family completely excommunicated. My siblings wanted nothing to do with me. Like I didn't exist to them anymore. And
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. Like I have issues with my family, but I mean, I don't know if I could ever go through that.
I mean, if you remember, it was actually in the early mid 2000s when, oh, sorry, it wasn't early mid 2000s. It was actually the early 2000s, late 90s when Nicole Kidman actually
Yes.
divorced Tom Cruise. And at that time, they had adopted 2 or 3
Yeah.
children. And the kids, and at the time, it wasn't as public, his devotion to Scientology.
Mhm.
Tom Cruise's, but the kids ended up staying with him.
Oh.
And till this day, supposedly, Nicole Kidman hasn't been allowed. Not so much hasn't been allowed, but the kids won't see her because, and they say it's because of Scientology. And also, Tom Cruise has a very interesting relationship with his daughter Shuri,
Mhm.
his daughter with Katie Holmes, because she wanted to leave Scientology and didn't want to raise her daughter in the Scientology
Yeah.
world. When she gave birth to Shuri, apparently he didn't want any noise. He didn't want her to scream because he didn't want to introduce anger into the baby
Okay.
when she was giving birth.
I always found the story of how they got together interesting because I've always heard the rumor that essentially she was recruited to marry him.
Yeah. Again, recruiting in a lot of ways is done like interviews.
Hmm.
When I worked, I mean, it's not obviously it's very, very different, but when you are bringing so many people, when you're trying to bring so many people in, for every 10, 20 interviews or like recruiting hangouts that you do, maybe one will pull through and sign on
Hmm.
and come to a few meetings, maybe if you're lucky. So you have to be consistent on your shit, be able to answer your questions every single time. You need to be confident about it. And heck, you gotta be really not only confident in the way you're talking about it, you also got to be sound smart. You got to take initiative and make it seem like they're not going to question you. If you say something, regardless of how stupid it is, if you sound smart enough and you look good doing it, they're so much less likely to
That
question you.
that almost sounds vaguely familiar to the last 4 years. I was gonna say, like, okay, when you were involved and you were doing your, like, was it a lot of buzzwords you're using? Said you're trying to
Yes.
sound smarter. You're trying to. So, was there a lot of buzzwords, catchphrases, things to catch people's attention involved in that?
Mhm. Absolutely. I remember learning in college. I remember in college there was like a week long job prep course. It wasn't a real thing. It wasn't like a course, but it was like a thing the college provided for soon to be graduates, just a DVD, like what to expect during the interviews, how to conduct yourself during an interview, how to make your resume look good depending on your career. Obviously, if you have a resume for an illustrator, it's very different versus an accountant. So you got to make different types of resumes, just stuff like that. But they even mentioned buzzwords, using certain buzzwords to make yourself sound more confident, involve more specific words that talk about leadership, management skills, initiate, things like that. And a lot of those tactics, in order to sound confident when it comes to conducting interviews, regardless of receiving end, are very, very similar.
Hmm. Is there such a thing? Because I mean, obviously, cult has a negative connotation towards it. Is there such a thing as a good cult?
Well, like we were saying, what is the definition of a cult? A cult can be a lot of different things. A cult can be a family, if
Mhm.
you kind of look at it. And when we associate cult, we associate it with these big ideas: Heaven's Gate, Jonestown,
Yeah,
things like that.
Westboro.
These evil people, but we
Yeah.
don't think of positive things, obviously.
Hmm.
Now, um, and now there have things. I kind of mentioned some positive aspects of being of unknowingly being part of the cult. Like I said, building my confidence. I
Mhm.
developed a lot of technical skills, things like that. But um, I being part of this connected family was huge. I loved it. I loved talking to my friends. I really felt like I had a family. I bawled my eyes out. Like whenever I was sad, when I was sick, when I would fight with my family or anything like that, I would call my boss. I would call my friends in the business. We didn't call it a job. We called it the business.
Hmm.
It's ridiculous. The thought process behind it, and I was like, oh, fuck. But I do think there are a lot of groups. Like I've heard Buddhists, I've heard followers of the Dalai Lama being very cult-like. So and just how big and small do these cults have to be, and that versus religion is, again, that kind of is an extension of it. Families can be very, very cult-like. So that's a complicated question, a very complicated answer.
I would think any extension of friends, not all like a family, could be considered a cult, right? Like, and I think you have to look at each group individual, maybe. I don't know. I
Mhm.
could be talking out of my asshole, I know.
Yeah, it's once you're in it, you're in it,
Mhm.
and you are rewarded quite a bit when you do something right. If you are able to recruit someone else in, oh my gosh, it's so nice. You feel like the best. When you're in it also, you feel amazing. It's a high. You love it. And when you do something really good, whether it's like sales or whatever it may be, you kind of trick yourself into believing you're helping people. And what's don't we all, in a lot of ways, want to help people
Mhm.
to a certain
Yeah,
extent?
definitely.
So when you left and you made the decision to leave, how hard was it? Not like for you emotionally, but like how was the process of actually leaving? Like, was it an easy transition, or was it something that they were still trying to keep you in with incentives and stuff like that?
They definitely wanted to keep me with. They tried bringing me with a. Well, if you are going to quit, you don't quit with a letter. You had to tell them face to face.
Oh
Okay.
boy.
So that's what if you quit, you had to tell them face to face, not in a call or anything. But on top of that, when you say you want to quit, you quit. You don't realize it, but that's your last day essentially. Because the thought process is if you quit and you still have like 1 or 2 weeks left remaining and be like, oh, this is my 2 weeks notice kind of thing. We don't want you to poison the mindset of our other coworkers, of other people. And we don't want you to bring that negativity into the group. And we know it's going to affect your sales quota. So what's the point of keeping you around for the next 2 weeks? But also you don't realize it, but that means you're not going to get paid. Obviously, you're not going to get paid appropriately. And again, this is your paid commission. Let's see. I was paid commission and then some because I did other stuff because of how involved I was. But so when I left, I did a handful of like freelance stuff where I helped other owners recruit. I helped others with postings on social media, things like that. And it came up to be like close to $3,000 or $4,000 worth for a few weeks of work on their behalf, in addition to what I was doing at my office. But when I turned in, I was like, hey, this is my last day. That was my last day. I never got paid for those other offices.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and when I would try to talk to my boss, when I would try to talk to my other people in the business about it, be like, hey, can you help me out? They were like, they just stopped returning my calls altogether.
Wow, so you're persona non grata.
Yeah, like you're cut completely. And again, these were people that I thought were my friends actively. I talked to them every single day. I would email them, message them actively throughout the day. And so it was a very tough process to kind of break away from psychologically. And even when I would apply for other jobs, there was aspects of those jobs and I would be offered a job with this business or whatever it may be. And I'd be like, oh man, I wish it was more like my other job. And not realizing how poisonous, how toxic it really was.
So I was gonna. How do I put this? So, are you that experience? Does it make you leery joining other groups?
What do you mean
Like,
by other
like
groups?
is there because you went through this cult like situation and what have you? If you get involved with like another group or whatever, is there like a hesitation on your part from what you've experienced in the past?
To a certain extent, like I will, like anytime I have a handful of friends that are on social media that are like friends from high school and college and stuff that are joined MLMs, like It Works, and those like Beach Bod and things like that,
Yeah.
and like those essential oil stuff and everything
Well, yeah,
where
I
they
know
try
some people are involved with that. Yeah,
and those are cults. Those are
yeah,
multi-level marketing schemes, absolutely.
yeah.
Where I
Pyramid
have
scheme.
been asked to do that, and they employ almost all of the exact same
Yeah, I
things.
know someone in my personal life who's involved with that, and that's one when I heard what they were doing and some of that. It just immediately leaped out to me that this was a pyramid scheme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and
it's
they bring these people like to retreats all over the world and stuff like that. And
yeah.
it's like, okay,
Yeah, I've been on many of those retreats, and when you're down there, you feel like $1,000,000. I loved it. I went to Mexico, I went to Puerto Rico, I went to Dominican Republic. And I went to a bunch of places to Miami and everything, and it was awesome. I loved it. I went to these like 4 day long, completely paid for things because I earned it.
yeah.
Um, and it was fun. And it felt like you were being paid to play and just
Yeah,
hang out with friends.
well, that part does sound fun.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. But it fucks you up. But it's It's all about the influence and trying to essentially, they're investing essentially in you to continue these relationships for the future, because there's that idea that having virtual friendships like this, it's great, it's cool.
Yeah.
The thing is, if we meet up in person, if we go to see each other at, like, say, a live event or something, isn't that friendship just like solidified and just a little bit more?
Yeah,
Essentially,
it's something I'm hoping to experience once all this is over and I actually manage to get my ass across the border to a live event.
right? Exactly.
Yeah, or if
So,
we can somehow manage to convince Skybound to bring an event to Canada.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Whenever I eventually, hopefully one day, move to Ireland, that would be my thing. I'm like, I'll make Schmoedown in Ireland a thing. I'll make Ireland like the place for Schmoedown.
Is that your dream locale?
Yeah, my husband and I, that's our ideal thing. That's something we wanted to do for a while. We were actually put on the wait list, essentially, once, but then the pandemic hit, and we were like, and our lawyers pretty much told us, yeah, just we'll have you on the wait list until they're okay with letting people in, essentially, non-essentials back in. We're like, oh, I guess.
So what was it about Ireland that makes it your dream place?
Um, my husband and I, we actually went there when we had our honeymoon 2 years ago, and we went to Ireland and Edinburgh and London. We were there for like 2.5 weeks, like throughout, and we stayed in Dublin for about a week. And we just loved it. Oh, the food was amazing. It was beautiful. The history was awesome. The culture was really great. The people were amazing. We just loved it. We really did. And it was I studied abroad when I was in college a few times. I went to China and I went to Rome. And so living abroad is something I've always wanted to do. And Lucas, he went abroad in college, not college, but high school for a few weeks to Austria. And he's traveled a little bit internationally, but he never really thought about living abroad as like an actual option until we went on our honeymoon. And he's like, holy shit, like we can do this. This would be like the best. And I was like, this is news. And I was like, I've been talking about wanting this for ages. How dare you? And he's like, I think going to Ireland really just made a click for him that it's not only an actual option, but it's really awesome. It's so beautiful. So he loved it.
Nice. Yeah, I've always heard good things about Ireland. I've never left Canada, so I've got none of those experiences.
I always wanted to go to Canada. I'm jealous.
Oh, you know what? Canada's often awesome. Where I live, I pretty much live in a bowl of mountains. Yeah, because
I can't remember what that's called. Is that if I can't pronounce it? Fjord? Fjord?
Fjord?
Yes.
I guess that's what it would be. I've never actually heard it described like that up here, but basically we're separated by mountains. Our next closest town is what? About 45 minutes away. Like there's nothing in between, just beautiful scenery.
Oh, jealous.
Yeah. Every time I put, like, Ben can attest. Every time I post pictures, I get a lot of jealous messages. Yeah. But then on the flip side, I've also lived in Vancouver, where it's a lot congested and stuff like that. And it's like there's definitely no place like home.
Very different. Very different. Yeah. What about you, Ben? Where do you live? Not to be creepy.
Here we go. I live in Los Angeles. I live in California, by the ocean.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so you're right in the heart of it all.
Kind of, yes, but I don't drive, which makes living here such a pain, because you can't get anywhere and you can't drive here.
Really? There's like I'd have thought Los Angeles was like intricately connected by transit.
It is, if you have money.
Oh, yeah, fair point. Yeah, that was one of the beautiful things I loved about Vancouver. It's just like you could get from where I lived in New West to downtown in like 20 minutes. Whereas Calgary, where I got family living, it started off as Calgary, and then like all these little communities sprouted up around there, and there's no transit connecting them. So that place, you really need a vehicle to get around, otherwise you're hooped.
Not kidding, not
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah.
What about where you live?
I just live in the greater DC area.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. I've been there. I was there 15 years ago. I actually got to tour the White House before it got all like paranoid because of 9/11.
Mhm.
And I actually got to ride in the presidential elevator.
nice.
Mm.
Closest
Yeah,
I've ever
there's a
come is I went to I got to see the changing of the guard outside the prime minister's house when I was 14, 13,
oh,
something
that's
like that.
cool.
Yeah. They're dressed like just like you would see in Buckingham Palace, so like the big beaver hats and stuff like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
This
Yeah,
whole
I saw that there's a whole bunch of rules that they are actually allowed to break. Like they are allowed to talk and
yeah.
things like that. A lot of that is like they wouldn't be able to do their jobs to the full extent if it wasn't if they weren't allowed to do a lot of those things.
Hmm.
So mhm.
Every time I think of those cards, I do think of that one I Love Lucy episode where they go to England and she like tries to get the cards to crack
Yeah.
a smile. It's so funny.
For me, it's
Mhm.
Austin Powers, the spy who shagged me.
That too.
Right? And the little bit at the end where he kisses the guard and the guard just looks at him and smiles and Austin's like
Yeah, with Heather Graham, she kisses him like 4 times to trying to get a reaction. And he's like,
Yeah.
nope.
Yeah,
Austin
and then
Powers, however.
Oh,
easily
I
my
did.
favorite Austin Powers movies.
I just got that.
Mhm.
Huh.
Yeah, easily the best of the trilogy in my opinion.
It's been a while since I've seen them, to be honest.
Yeah.
I feel like it's I'm actually I feel like I do need to revisit that trilogy. It's been a while, but I'm scared to watch it because I used to love the trilogy as a kid, and I'm scared to rewatch it only to find out it ages horribly in a million and one ways.
So you're not wrong. Like a lot of that, especially that first one, a lot of
Yeah.
aspects really didn't age well, especially like the misogyny and all that stuff. But some of the jokes still hit, like a lot of the Doctor Evil stuff and
Mhm.
the Will Ferrell stuff. Like a lot of that stuff still hits. But the
Mhm.
Austin Powers character, yeah, it's very problematic. 22 years later.
Yeah, not
Well, yeah,
for
there's I mean, it's there um but yeah, you're totally right. There's I mean, it's also what I like about it is that it's actively making fun of the misogyny. It's poking fun at that old way of thinking, which I think is great, which I think is hilarious. But also I don't like the idea that it's is still embracing this idea of toxic masculinity as well because like when I say it's something doesn't age well, I'm not only referring to um how it appeals like how its treatments of female characters. A lot of people think of it almost exclusively with that, but we don't really talk about it in terms of toxic masculinity. We don't really talk about it in terms of the actors like Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that's in it, and regardless of how you feel about Tom Cruise, I'm like, I will forever love the Mission Impossible franchise. I
Yeah.
will. I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
that guy is quite the contradiction because you hear all these like weird things about him, but then you also hear he's like the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah, I consistently hear he's one
Yeah.
of the most genuine
Yeah.
people. He makes you feel amazing, and I'm like, hey, that's a good recruiter right there for
Yeah,
Seinfeld.
and then
Good
hearing
job.
what you've been saying this episode, it's just like,
Mhm,
okay, okay.
mhm.
and
Yeah.
and with all that, he still has a talent. Like he
Oh,
still
for
can
sure.
act.
Mhm.
Like yeah.
Well, I mean, he's definitely an actor that I think he is so talented, but I think he's so much more than he's currently giving us. Because oh my gosh, do you guys remember
Oh, his old roles.
Vanilla Sky. Do you guys remember Magnolia?
Yeah,
Like a lot of
and you
these.
go back further than that, you've got like The Color of Money. One of my favorites, even though it gets ridiculed, Far and Away, where he plays an Irish immigrant.
I
Movies like that.
actually like that movie. It's ridiculous, but I kind of like
A little on the
it.
long side, but it's pretty good. It's pretty
Yeah,
good.
I mean, like Ron Howard, good for
Yeah.
you. You're trying something different. I
Yeah.
respect that.
One of his
My favorite Tom Cruise movie is either Rain Man or yeah, I have to say one of the Mission Impossible movies.
I saw like The Color of Money for the first time a few months ago, and I was very disappointed because I love the first one. Oh my gosh. With Paul Newman, I was so excited. I was like, Marty Scorsese, Paul Newman doing the sports movie? Yes. And I saw it and I was like, oh fuck, this is so bad.
Oh, really? You didn't like the color of Money?
Oh my gosh, I was so distraught. But I mean, I feel like Marty Scorsese, I have a love-hate relationship because I love gangster movies and I like a lot of his crime movies. However, I think he has a real big problem with female characters. He's kind of similar to Quentin Tarantino, not to get off topic, but he's kind of similar to Quentin Tarantino, where almost like 90% of his female characters are traumatized in some way to support the male character.
Yeah.
They're shot, they're assaulted, they're flat out raped, they're beaten to death.
Yeah. The one that comes to mind is Jenny from Gangs of New York. She's got the large scar across her stomach. I think it's from a failed abortion.
Yeah, and there's this idea that the female character is stronger because she went through this trauma and she's overcoming it. Like, bitch, no. A female can be strong without going through this trauma. A female character can be more than just getting traumatized for the support of a male character having some kind of revenge or whatever the fuck it is. Like, dude, come on. Seriously. But again, that's a whole other conversation. If you can't tell, I've had many discussions and fights over this.
Yeah, it is like back at the time, it maybe wasn't something that was thought about, but definitely it's a conversation that's definitely worth having nowadays.
It's a lot. I remember like breaking it to a friend that he's like, yeah, I love Quentin Tarantino. I was like, well, which one's your favorite? I asked him like jokingly, half jokingly, like which one has your favorite like foot shot?
Yeah, no kidding.
And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, yeah, Tarantino, like he has a foot fetish. He's kind of open about it. Like in every single one of his movies, there's like a bunch of feet of the ladies. And he's like, no, he doesn't. And I was like, he makes out with a stripper's foot in one of the movies. And
I'm actually not well versed with Tarantino's films.
And I was like, yeah. I mean, he had Kurt Russell almost make out with a foot on Rose McGowan's foot. No, not Rose McGowan. What's her face? And Death Proof.
Death Proof, right?
Rosario Dawson, yes. Or Rosario Dawson. And he didn't direct it, but he wrote it. So
that's just wrong.
I know that the foot fetish. Feet gross me out. I don't know why.
My mom's a podiatrist.
Oh yeah.
Feet don't bother me all that much as long as you don't have creepy gnarly feet. But also, fun fact, Uma Thurman has ranky feet. Her feet are so bad. She needs like 5 surgeries like pronto. Oh my gosh, her bunions are intense.
That's just wrong.
Sorry.
Okay. Actually, unfortunately, I need to cut this short because something has actually just come up on my end. Thank you very much for joining us, Alex. It is always a pleasure to have you on. You're a very, very funny individual. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Of course, and definitely would love to have you back on again. Where can everybody find you?
You can find me right here at real_Alex Mack. You can also find me hosting an episode of Cinema Bias here very soon with American God star Ka-Yoon Kim. We're going to be diving into Neil Gaiman's adaptation of Stardust from 2007, directed by Matthew Vaughn. It's going to be a fun time. I cannot wait to wrap it up with the amazing actress. But yeah, I do a whole bunch of stuff with the Call to Action crew. So check us out on YouTube and anywhere podcasts are found.
Right on. I love Stardust. When it was revealed, Robert De Niro as the gay captain, I was like, yes.
Captain Shakespeare.
Oh yeah, I'm all here for this. That was awesome.
I
You know
Ben,
why
haven't
he did
seen
that
it.
movie?
I haven't
You know
seen
why he did
it.
that? He apparently, okay, fun fact, he apparently turned down, he was actually offered to be Captain Barbossa
oh,
from Pirates of the Caribbean, and he regretted it, turning it down. And so he did this right after. He was like, right away, he was like, I got to do this. I wanted to be a captain of a ship, and I get to be now.
I can't see him as Barbossa, but as Captain Shakespeare, man, he's definitely stole the show.
He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys can find me at the radio too. You can find me here on Cinema Breeze every Tuesday, every Friday on Recapping the Past with Matt, every Saturday on Get the Radio flagship show, Finishing Cooking and Old Friend Soul, every Saturday on Ben's Hot Takes, and every Saturday on Matt's Showdown. I think that's everything.
That sounds about right. And Ben's listed all the stuff on this channel that you can find me on. You can also find me on Schmoes of the North every week. Friday nights, we do a live show after the latest episode, Schmodown drops. So definitely check me out on there. And you can also find me at soda_the_saxman on Instagram and Twitter. So once again, Alex, thank you very much for joining us. And we will see you guys next week. Don't forget, everyone, stay sweaty, smash cancer.
Smash, smash.